Hello there, and welcome to Slooh, Space for Everyone. I'm Jerry Montour, your host as usual tonight, as we track a comet which is officially called 45P Honda Merkos Pajusa. But thankfully, for our purposes, we can simply call it 45P. Now, this comet recently made its way around the sun and for the last few weeks has been edging closer and closer to us. It'll continue on that path tonight and into tomorrow morning before making its closest approach. And we're hoping to be able to see it live using our telescopes in the Canary Islands. And here to tell us more about that is our friend and Slooh astronomer Paul Cox. Paul, welcome back. The weather giving us a hard time right now, huh?
It is a little bit. This is a live shot coming direct from the Observatory Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands, where Slooh's telescopes are based, and you can see we are in the clouds. We can actually see it as if it's daylight like this because of this full moon tonight. So it's kind of illuminating this cloud, but it has enveloped us a little bit. But we have been watching Comet 45P for the last 10 days every morning, Jerry. So we've still got some fabulous images coming up during the show.
So we'll be showing you some of those images, and we got to thank our Slooh members for that too.
Absolutely. I mean, they're the people who have been scheduling this and a whole bunch of other comets every single night. And, you know, that people have been snapping away. And of course, Slooh members get to watch the live views direct from the telescopes. But if they control the telescope, those pictures automatically get saved for them in their own private little area as well.
Okay, so here is one of the shots we were talking about. Right there in the center of your screen, you can see 45P. How big is this comet?
Well, our best estimate is it's between 0.5 kilometer and 1.6 kilometers. That's about 0.3 to a mile in diameter, something like that. But of course, most of the time when we see a comet, Jerry, as we see it here, we've got some great color shots coming up as well to show this gorgeous, gorgeous green color. Look at that. You know, we're not actually seeing the comet nucleus. We're seeing the coma of the comet, the head. Coma is Latin for hair. So we're seeing this enormous kind of shell of excited ionized gas around it. The actual core, the nucleus of this is about a mile in diameter and is hidden within all of that gas and dust that's sublimating and being blown off the comet.
Well, these are absolutely gorgeous.
Let me tell you about this one. Now, this is Comet 45P, but from before Christmas. So it was at perihelion, what's called perihelion, on New Year's Eve. That's its closest approach to the sun. And in the build up to perihelion, this is what we were seeing live in the telescopes every night. And it was sporting this brilliant, brilliant tail. In fact, several tails, and it kept disconnecting as well. Comets are the most surprising objects. It's why so many members love watching them. And we were really hoping that after perihelion, now when it's emerged from behind the sun, that we were going to see the same kind of tail. But we haven't. Instead, this comet has done the unexpected, just as they always do, and has got rid of its tails, but has developed this brilliant, this massive coma, this green coma, and it's an absolutely wonderful color.
Okay, educate me. How does the comet lose its tail?
How does it? Well, so much of it depends on both the surface of the comet and how active it is, and a lot of that is directly related to the solar energy, the solar radiation that it's being pummeled by. And so often what we see on a comet is it does get very, very active as it approaches the sun. But then as it starts to leave the sun, it's now leaving the sun, so it's encountering less and less energy. That's how it loses its tail. But one member yesterday has just posted in the Slooh Clubhouse, which is where members hang out, some new images that he took using the Slooh telescopes of Comet 2P Encke. And that, surprisingly, has suddenly developed this huge dust tail, this huge fanning dust tail, totally out of the blue, totally unexpected. That is why comets are just such great targets for the Slooh telescopes. You never quite know from one night to another exactly what you're going to see. And here's a little time lapse actually that some of the members made. These are just the grayscale images of how quickly this comet 45P appears to be moving across the sky. And of course, Jerry, that's mainly because of how close it is. It's obviously making its closest approach tonight to Earth. And the closer an object is to Earth, usually the faster its apparent speed is.
All right, Paul, do we know how close it is as I speak, and how close will it get?
It is around now about 7.65 million miles. In a few hours' time, when it does make its closest approach, that's in about 4 hours' time, I think, 5 hours' time, it's going to be 7.7 million miles away from Earth. And to put that into perspective, that's about 32 times the mean distance between the Earth and the Moon. But in astronomical terms, that is a stone's throw. I mean, an object of this size, a mile across, if it did impact Earth, and it's not going to, but if it did, it would leave slightly more than a scratch. We'd certainly know about
I would assume so. But in the grand scheme of things, in comet speak, how close is 7 million miles? Is it very close?
Dramatically so. It is. It's very close. I mean, it's very close for any kind of object to come within the proximity of Earth. I mean, having said that, we have seen this fairly recent spate of near-Earth asteroids, which have been coming between the Earth and the Moon. But those have been tiny, tiny objects in comparison to a comet. And most comets are a lot larger than most of the asteroids that tend to stray into our part of the solar system. But you see, Jerry, the other thing, we cover all meteor showers, don't we, on Slooh? And meteor showers are the thing that tell us very clearly that comets throughout history have intersected Earth's orbit, because those meteor showers are caused by the debris left behind by exactly this kind of comet, like 45P, crossing Earth's path, and then Earth moves through it as it orbits the sun. And we see that wonderful spectacle of a meteor shower when all of those particles burn up at a huge velocity in the atmosphere.
All right, Paul, a great way to kick off the show. Thank you so much. I know you're going to be back near the end of the program to tell us how we can see the comet for ourselves. So we'll talk to you in just a bit. Also coming up, astronomy journalist and author Bob Berman will be here to give us some insight into the importance of comets from a scientific perspective. And later, Slooh's human spirit correspondent, Helen Avery, will tell us all about how comets have been viewed throughout history. Some said they were messages from the gods, and others, well, we'll find out. And if you have any questions for our guests, or you'd like to share photos of the comet that you've taken yourself, please do. Tweet them to @Slooh on Twitter, or join in our live chat on Facebook. Comet 45P. All right, Bob Berman coming up next, so don't go away.
This February, a ring of fire will rise over planet Earth. Millions will be plunged into the moon's shadow as it races across the planet at supersonic speeds. The annular eclipse will make its way across South America, through Chile and Argentina, before crossing the Atlantic Ocean, making landfall in Africa, casting Angola, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Zambia into shadow. On February 26th, explore an eclipse like you never have before. Be a part of this worldwide event, right here on Slooh. Space for everyone.
All right, and welcome back, everybody. I'm Jerry Montour. Tonight we are tracking Comet 45P just before it makes its closest approach to Earth. A beautiful, beautiful object right there. Lovely green color. So what is a comet, and why do we and scientists care? Well, to answer those questions, we're joined by astronomy journalist and author of the book Zoom, How Everything Moves, Bob Berman. Bob, How does this comet move?
Thank you, Jerry. Good to see you.
You too. So how everything
I'm assuming
moves,
I'm not
that
answering you because
includes
I'm
comets.
assuming that it was a rhetorical question that, in space, when something has motion, it just remains in motion. That's what Newton told us. And so it's moving by its own inertia. It doesn't have any rocket engines on it, of course.
Okay. Well, what do you think of these live images? I mean, we're having weather issues right now in the Canary Islands, but some pretty spectacular still photos.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. Just seeing this, the comet is just really gorgeous. And I love it when they're green. It's only once in a while we get a green comet caused by organic things on the comet. You're not going to find that on an asteroid or on our moon. There's nothing organic on the moon. By organic, we mean carbon is in it. And there are types of carbon when bonded together. And then there's a molecule called cyanogen. And all of these can cause a green glow. And if comets aren't eerie enough, boy, that green color, that just adds to it. Because, stars come in every color except for green. There are no green stars. So it's nice to see something green in the sky. It's a nice change.
Yeah, to me, it almost makes the sky come alive. You see it moving, it's green, it's almost like it's a living, breathing thing. So, Bob, here's a overarching question. Why in the world do we study them? What's so fascinating to you about comets?
Well, it's two parts. There's something in our guts. I know Helen is going to be talking about the cultural, the lore and legend surrounding comets, but it's true. It's done something to our spirits. I know it doesn't sound scientific, but through the ages, comets stir something in us that goes beyond what they are. Paul just mentioned it's only a mile across ball of mostly ices and dust. The tail can extend for millions of miles, but it's not something substantive the way the sun is. And yet you see a comet and people go, whoa, it's one of those things that really has a reaction. So that's the first reason we study them, because it touches us. And once every 15 years on average, when we get what's called a great comet, that's not an adjective that just means, hey, that's great. That's a great comet. It's actually a scientific term that means a comet bright enough to be seen in city skies. We had Yakutaki and Hale-Bopp in the 90s. We had Comet West back in the 70s. We get them once in a while. So even when we require telescopes like the great Slooh telescopes to see it well, it's still, it's not a neutral object. It's something very special. Okay, but you're asking for the scientific reason. Well, they're relics of the birth of the solar system. When everything else has changed and evolved, Earth in particular, comets are still part of the original material the solar system was made of. Some think that they supplied the oceans, that the reasons we have oceans is because comets delivered the water. And certainly when they hit our atmosphere, or even bits of them in meteor showers, they deliver water. So we're getting fresh water, fresh supplies. We're staying hydrated thanks to these things.
All right. Speaking of which, we're still waiting for the clouds to part in the Canary Islands so we can get a live shot of Comet 45P. In the meantime, enjoy the slideshow provided to us by some of our Slooh members. Bob, is it okay to call every comet unique in its own right, or not?
Well, I think so, Jerry, because not only do they have individual orbits, some come diving down at us from above the plane of the solar system, some orbit the sun backwards from the direction of all the other planets. All the planets are it's a one-way street here in the solar system, except for comets. All the planets, all the moons of the planets, with two exceptions, everything goes in one direction. Not comets. They're as likely to come from weird directions than any other. So every one of their orbits is unique. And sure, the way the gases come off of them, ice can't melt in space because you need pressure to have liquid. So the ice turns directly to gas. And then the way the tail forms, often a double or a multiple tail, this one did, and that no two comets are the same.
Well, through the millennia, it has been impossible for anyone to look at a comet and not be impressed in some way. Most people back then were freaked out by them. Now we know better. Or do we, Bob? Is there any chance that a comet could strike planet Earth?
Well, yeah, sure, it can happen. It has happened, and it will happen again. Not this one, but probably the most dangerous. Halley's comet comes fairly close to us, and there's a comet Swift-Tuttle that can come on a dangerous trajectory, and so yeah, that can happen. And but beyond that, you mentioned through the ages, most people were freaked out. You look at them in the sky, and these days we look at a great comet. Those of you who remember Hale-Bopp and Hyakutake, naked eye comets. Hyakutake required country skies, but Hale-Bopp was seen from cities. Know that they're gorgeous, but through the ages they were more than that. They were omens. They were portents, usually of doom and gloom and death and bad things. Comets were not good. They disturbed the usual order. They disturbed the sense of permanence and rigidity that people had of the universe. But boy, this is gorgeous. In the constellation Hercules, this one's not up till about 3 in the morning when Hercules is high in the sky. So it's not a convenient comet, naked eye. It's not bright enough for us to see, just look up and see it. But thanks to the great Slooh telescopes, we're seeing it as well as any.
Yeah, really fantastic images. So, Bob, do you remember the first comet you saw? And was it a comet that first turned you on to astronomy?
That would be a good story. I'm always tempted to go along with it. They say a good actor, what's the line? Is somebody who can make things up and be insincere. But if I'm to be honest, no. First comet I saw, I think, may have been Comet Bennett in the early 70s. And I just was taking a walk and looked up and saw it. I didn't even know it was going to be there. Comet Halley, I led a group of people to the equator to see Halley's comet when it came in the fall of 85. And then early in 86, when it was supposed to be better, the tail fell off. Just as Paul was explaining, that happened to this comet, 45P, happened to Comet Halley in the spring of 1986. Tail fell off. That's the comet's best feature. And so that's not good. So I remember that. And boy, many beautiful ones through the years. Iris, Araki, Alcock, and just a few years ago, we had a nice one. Comet West may have been the best of them all. That was in 76, if I remember right, March of 76. That tail was as long as 20 full moons in a row. So you really have a range of comet experiences. It's so nice to have one back here. In Hercules, constellation Hercules, kind of a dim constellation, which is why, look at these Slooh images. We don't really see any brilliant foreground stars because it's not a very bright constellation that it's in front of.
All right, before we let you go, Bob, one more question. As far as comets go, does this one impress you?
Well, sure, and I especially like that green color, don't you?
I do.
We don't, we don't always get that. It's very nice. And what are green? When you think of space objects, I already mentioned there are no green stars. There is one green planet, Uranus. So green, we're kind of missing green in space. We need more green, and especially now in winter, those of us who are in the parts of the United States and parts of the world where winter is long, we're missing the green. So the comets are supplying this a refreshing dash of color to the sky. This is great.
Green. We got a man on it, Bob. Don't worry. The name of the book is Zoom: How Everything Moves. Bob Berman, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right, coming up here on the show, I'll be chatting with Slooh's human spirit correspondent, Helen Avery, who will tell us about how comets have often historically been seen as harbingers of doom, as Bob just mentioned. And later, if you're hoping to see this comet for yourself, well, Paul Cox will be back to tell us how you can do it. So don't go away. And we welcome you back to Slooh, Space for Everyone. We are tracking the close approach of Comet 45P. And what you're looking at here are still images of Comet 45P taken by some of our Slooh members. We are waiting for the skies to clear up over the Canary Islands to bring you live shots of the comets, and we will hopefully have that happen shortly. There is what we're dealing with in the Canary Islands, current conditions right now. So we can't see the comet, but hopefully we will be able to soon. But did you know that historically comets were often considered very, very bad news? Here to tell us more about that is Slooh's human spirit correspondent, Helen Avery. Helen, welcome back to the show. What do you think of the live of these images right now? They're not live, but what do you think of the still shots? I think they're pretty spectacular myself.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really love the greenness, and also just sort of seeing that sort of plot over time of seeing the stillness of the background and then watching the comet as it slowly moves through the sky. Sort of it's unbelievable. And even just, what always blows my mind is that we're all here together from all over the world, this community of Slooh just watching the skies, which always makes me smile.
It is wonderful. It's almost like the sky comes alive. Space is a living thing. So, I mean, I'm looking at this, Helen. It's not scary to me, but it was scary to a lot of people for many, many years, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was, Jerry. It's funny. Like as far back as what we've got as records of Babylonian times, that comets were associated with pestilence, drought, and war, like the three things that can really screw your day up as a human being. And this kind of idea really stuck throughout the ages of, especially like, I don't know if you know this, but the Chinese astronomers were kind of obsessed by comets because they saw them as always coming with some sort of end of an empire or end of a dynasty. And they, not having photographs and cameras like we had, they drew them. And if you look online, you can see all these beautiful names of the comets and pictures based on their tails that they're drawn. But as I say, they were seen as something that was bringing a lot of bad news. And that sort of stuck through the ages. And I think it's sort of interesting that now we still have that sort of sentiment. There's this bit of oh God, it's a comet. What the hell's going to happen?
Yeah, I understand that, but why, Helen, would someone look at something that is ostensibly as pretty as Comet 45P and automatically think it's a bad thing? Why wouldn't they think it was a good thing?
Right. That's a good question. So if you, if you look at this picture, not this one, but the one where you can see the comet being tracked, that starts to give us a bit of a clue. And Bob hinted at this earlier. So back in the ancient days, people looked to the heavens as a sign of stability. And there were very advanced civilizations within, that had advanced astronomy, and they could predict the heavens. Whereas Earth, on the other hand, who knows what your neighbor was going to do and what the weather was going to do, like we see tonight in the Canary Islands. It was so chaotic and unpredictable, which is interesting because there's sort of this parallel spiritually of, Earth being sort of ever changing and life and death, the cycle, and then the heavens being very still. And then all of a sudden, you see something like Comet 45P starting to move through the sky, and you start to wonder, what the hell's going on? I could always rely on this to be predictable and eternal, and then something has arrived. And some Native Americans called comets the imposter. It was seen as just something that came into the sky and was very scary. So I think that's one reason, perhaps, and we're sort of guessing here. And another, and this is really sort of stretching the boundaries of imagination, I suppose. But let's not forget that a comet wiped out, or potentially a comet wiped out the dinosaurs. And scientists say that throughout history, there are periods where we wonder if it was an asteroid or a meteorite or a comet that caused massive upheavals on Earth. And some scientists say that even like 12,800 BC, there was an impact of a comet over a period of years that caused great floods and fires. And so you kind of wonder, is that in the DNA that we know that the comet can change our lives like this? It can just wipe us out or destroy, or like everything on Earth and have to start again. And that seems more obvious today. Like for modern man to have this idea of, hang on a minute, there's a comet coming, we could be wiped out. It seems a little more obvious than back then, but those are my guesses.
Well, that's certainly understandable, especially if you've witnessed pestilence and very bad things happen after a comet is hit. Are there any instances, Helen, where comets were actually a good thing?
Well, it depends what side you're looking at, So, for example, Halley's Comet that we talked about, the Battle of Hastings is one of the sort of famous records of Halley's Comet that comes every 76 years. So it's, we've tracked Halley's Comet through history. Now, for William the Conqueror, obviously Halley's Comet was a good thing. He took it as an omen that it was a good sign to invade Britain in the Norman conquest. So for him, it was great. And then sort of more dubious, Genghis Khan in the 1200s believed that the comet was his star, and it encouraged him to invade southeastern Europe. And obviously it resulted in millions of people dying. So, but depends what side you're looking at it, I suppose. Is the comet your good omen, or is the comet your bad omen? But more seriously, and this is what Bob was kind of talking about, the comet is our source of life on Earth. So to think of the comet as a bad omen or as something negative is almost sort of counterintuitive. Yes, it can sort of destroy us, but it also gave us life on this planet. So in my mind, comets are a very good thing.
I agree 100%. And it's nice to know that we finally turned the corner, Helen, and now we look at comets as beautiful things and things that are fascinating and should be studied and revered.
Right. And what I find like most interesting about comets is that you have this sense that you can look upon a comet and understand the fragility of life, and that gives you like a sense of fear. And in fact, in France in the 1400s, people died of fright of a comet. Nothing bad happened with this comet. There was so much propaganda being pushed around that they died of fright. Or you can look at a comet and say, yes, it reminds me of the fragility of life, which makes me feel alive, which makes me sort of connect what Carl Sagan talks about, the pale blue dot, that at any moment we could go, so why sweat all the small stuff? Let's make our lives count. Let's, understand we're all one planet, and you can sort of get touchy-feely about it. So it's sort of interesting. You can look at it with fear, or you can see it as a sign to really live your life and be alive.
Yeah, that's the side of the coin that I'm on. And Helen, I really hope the skies clear up over the Canary Islands, because I want to get a live look at this thing, because to me, it's fascinating and it is gorgeous. All right, Helen, thank you so much for stopping by. We really appreciate it. Slooh's human spirit correspondent, Helen Avery. All right, coming up,
Thanks, Jared.
the comet getting closer over the next few hours. So how can you see it for yourself? Well, Paul Cox will return to explain, so stay tuned. We're excited to announce the release of our first book, The Saturn Above It, an anthology of short fiction about space. And welcome back. We continue to track Comet 45P just before it makes its closest approach to Earth, which happens in just a few hours. There's still plenty of time to see it for yourself if the skies are clear over you. Right now, they are not clear over the Canary Islands. We were hoping to bring you live images of the comet, but that hasn't happened yet. So what we're looking at right here are still shots provided by some of our Slooh members. And there is the shot I was talking about. Those are the weather conditions right now in the Canary Islands. So back now to tell us how you can actually look at and perhaps record the comet for yourself is our friend Paul Cox. All right, Paul, if our viewers want to see the comet during its close approach, what should they do?
Join Slooh.
Ah.
Other than, of course, tonight when it's cloudy. But we've been watching it. Slooh members have been watching this comet every single night since it returned to the pre-dawn skies for the last 10 days. But we were kind of hoping this comet was going to reach what's called naked eye visibility, get bright enough so that you could see it with the unaided eye. But unfortunately, it hasn't done that. But the good news is that even with a small pair of binoculars, you should be able to spot Comet 45P. Now, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, as you can't see it if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, but if you're in Northern Hemisphere, Europe, Russia, China, Northern United States, around 3 a.m. local time, and that's tonight, by the way, 3 a.m. local time tonight, look east and about 20 degrees up, just to the north of east, you will see through a pair of binoculars an unmistakable fuzzy patch. It'll look kind of like an out of focus star. You may even see some of the color, some of this green color that we've been talking about, generated by diatomic carbon and cyanogen. If you're lucky, you will be able to see that. But this comet is moving so fast at the moment. Tomorrow night, look in the same location, 20 degrees above the eastern horizon, at 2 o'clock, and you'll see it. So every night at the moment, it's moving about an hour earlier every single night, but it's still going to be predominantly in the east until in about a week's time. It'll be climbing quite high in the sky by midnight. We've got some finder charts actually, Jerry, in the Slooh clubhouse where members hang out over that period of time, so you can pinpoint it fairly easily. But tonight, around 3 a.m. local time, get your binoculars out, look east, 20 degrees up in the sky, just to the right of east, and you should see this little smudgy patch in your binoculars.
Okay, fair enough. Now, if I were to wander outside, the skies are fairly clear where I'm living right now, and if I were to wander outside to take a still photograph of the comet, I'm not going to because it's 5 degrees below zero outside right now. But if I were going to do it, yeah, what type of lens would I take, and how would I make that shot?
Gosh, you've really shown your true colors now, Jerry. You're really not an astronomer, an amateur astronomer in any way, shape or form. If you're not willing to brave the what? -10, -15, you're a wuss, mate. You're an absolute wuss. Anyway, moving on. If you were...
Guilty.
If you were to have that courage and you took your dog out wrapped up in your coat to keep you warm, right? A standard DSLR camera on a tripod, it's got to be on a tripod, pointed in the direction I've just said, to the east, and take a 30-second exposure, probably ISO anywhere in kind of 6,000. You know, you could probably get away with less than that actually. But take a 30-second exposure and you will see this comet. You know, you don't want to take too wide a shot, but you'll see the comet and you will see the green tinge to it as well. And I can say this so definitely because I saw an amateur DSLR photograph of it taken yesterday morning, and that is exactly how it looked in a 30-second exposure. So this is just a standard consumer DSLR camera with the kit lens. Make sure it's on a tripod. Make sure if you haven't got a cable release, make sure you put it on timer release so you don't jog the camera while you press the shutter button, and that's it. And you will capture Comet 45P for yourself, if you're brave enough.
All right, Paul. Yeah, good stuff. I was just going to say, here's hoping there are more Comet 45Ps this summer.
There are. We've got some exciting ones actually this year. Yeah.
Good. That's what I want to hear. All right, you must be pretty proud of our Slooh members because the still shots that we have gotten from them have been pretty spectacular. So how can new members get involved?
Well, you know, it's so easy. And in fact, in this Slooh Clubhouse that I'm talking about, this is a kind of virtual place where Slooh members hang out, they exchange images and expertise and all sorts of other things. We've got some quick starter videos in there, Jerry. And I always tell new members, it is a lot easier to set up a Comet mission, we call them a mission, a photo session, than they may think. But of course, there's one slight difficulty that a comet gives you that, say, a galaxy or nebulae doesn't. A galaxy or nebulae is always in the same place in the sky in relation to the background stars. But comets move. We can see actually in this image, this is from a single mission. And the special cameras that we use actually take images through clear red, green and blue filters. And this one is moving so fast against the background stars. If you look carefully at the bottom left, there's a long whitish line. Then you see a red dot, then you see a green dot, then you see a blue spot. That's how fast the comet is moving as those long exposures are being taken. But we show people in the clubhouse exactly where you find those coordinates to set up your very own comet mission. And comets in the Slooh membership are, I would say, probably the most active group of Slooh members, the guys who all get together. It's run by Christina Feliciano, actually, a member, and they run these huge observing campaigns in collaboration with professional astronomers. For example, 67P, you probably remember that one. That's the European Space Agency's Rosetta mission. They sent the Philae lander there. Slooh members built up the largest data collection of ground-based telescopic images using Slooh's telescopes than the rest of the world put together, Jerry. I mean, this is a huge contribution to science that any Slooh member can make. You don't have to be an expert in it. You can contribute your missions, set up the missions, donate your data, and that's it. You're contributing to science. Pretty cool.
Pretty cool indeed. Can't do it without them. Okay, Paul, one last thing. Make the clouds go away in the Canary Islands, would you please?
Okay, I'll try. I'll get my large fan out. I have one of those in one of the domes. All right.
Work on that. All right, get some sleep. Thank you so much, Paul Cox. Really appreciate it. That about wraps it up for us tonight, folks. I want to give a special thanks to Paul Cox, also Slooh's human spirit correspondent Helen Avery, and author and journalist Bob Berman. A big thank you as well to all of you watching right now, especially those of you who have been with us all night, joining us for the lunar eclipse earlier this evening as well. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, head on over to slooh.com, become a member to stay up to date on all of the upcoming shows and to join in our community of members viewing the skies every night using our telescopes when the weather permits, of course. There are some really exciting changes coming to Slooh in the next few weeks, and we can't wait to share it all with you. But the only way to get it all right away is to become a member, and it's free to try, so do it now. You won't have to wait long for the next big show either. In just a couple of weeks, on February 26th, we'll be broadcasting another eclipse, the Southern Ring of Fire solar eclipse. We'll be casting its shadow over parts of South America, Africa, and Antarctica. You can't see it anywhere else. We'll have it live right here on Slooh. Of course, we're also gearing up for our live broadcast of the celestial event of the year, the transcontinental eclipse in the US on August 21st. We've got big plans for Slooh members. To stay up to date on the latest, just head over to slooh.com and sign up. Until then, I'm Jerry. You're watching Slooh, Space for Everyone. Thanks for stopping by.